This is lecture 5. And in this first lecture, we'll discuss the vision of the 4 graced beasts. That's Daniel chapter 7. Now, Daniel chapter 7 is to a very large extent just a repetition of Daniel chapter 2. It's just repeating the same things that we have already discussed in chapter 2. And that's extremely important because we read in the story of Joseph, we've previously seen that Daniel and Joseph, there's a very clear correspondence between these two. And in the case of in the case of Joseph, we saw that he says the reason why the vision has been repeated twice.
Wait a moment, please. There's a mobile phone on.
No, sorry, I think that's mine.
What is now? The reason why it's been repeated twice is because it's sure it will really happen. It's absolutely sure that it will happen. That's why it's been repeated twice. So in this case, we can take it in the same manner. The reason why the same prophecy is given twice is to confirm that it's sure, as we have seen yesterday, where Daniel says that the great God of heaven, has revealed it to the king, and therefore it is surely sure to happen. It will really happen. Okay, so in this vision, we have 4 beasts coming out of the sea. The first beast, what was the first beast coming out of the sea? I believe you have read the chapter. The lion, the next one. The bear, the third one. The leopard, the fourth one. Yeah, a large beast with 10 horns. Terrible beast. Okay. Again, let's go back and look at the framework that we're discussing these prophecies in. And I'll come back to this every time because it's quite important for me that you really understand the historical setting. If you don't understand the historical setting, the prophecies of Daniel will not mean this much to you. Okay. So I'm just repeating again. You've already seen this, but we'll come to this again and again. The time of Abraham is about 1800 BC. Gives you perspective. We now, you see, it starts at 1800, it ends at 1800. BC AD. And we're now at 2015. We don't know how many more years there are to go, but this is where we are. And right in the middle is the time of Jesus Christ, 4 BC, 232 AD. And before that, after the time of Abraham, we have the Exodus in 1:4, the New Assyrian Empire, the New Babylonian Empire, the Persian Empire, what's also called the Achaemenid Empire, the Macedonian or Greek Empire of Alexander the Great, and out of his empire there came 4 different kingdoms. The empire of Alexander were divided between the 4 generals, you remember? 2 of them that's important is Seleucid and Ptolemaic kingdoms.
I have a question.
Yes?
Macedonian Greek Empire, Alexander the Great.
Yes.
Is the time really so short? 350?
Yeah, this is just for Alexander the Great.
Okay.
After that, it was divided, and the divided kingdom was from 323. The Seleucid Empire was till 90 BC, and the Ptolemaic Empire in Egypt was till 64 BC. So that's about nearly 300 years. But this evolved out of that empire. So in the Bible, we'll see in Daniel, this is considered and discussed as an outflow of this empire. It's not presented as a different empire in itself. Then it's the time of Antiochus IV, 175 to 164 BC. Then the time of Jesus Christ, and then during his life, the Roman Empire was on the scene, and the Roman Empire was the greatest empire in Western history. It was divided in 2. Later on, there was the western part that existed till 476 AD, and out of that came 2 important empires, one in the western part of the empire and one in the eastern part of the empire. In the eastern part, which empire came out of the eastern part of the old Roman Empire? Which empire was it? Yeah, what was it called? Byzantian. The Byzantine Empire. Okay, that was the eastern one. And the Western Empire, what was that called? Holy Roman. Perfect. Holy Roman, neither Roman, no holy. Okay, and that brings us to 1806.
Question.
Yes.
Antiochus the Fourth, is he one? Is he in the?
He was a Seleucian ruler.
Okay.
Yeah, he was Seleucid. He was a ruler of Syria, not Ptolemaic. He fought against the Ptolemaic king in Egypt. But we'll come to that. That's in chapter 8, as well as chapter 10 and 11, and 12 is actually more something that refers to the future. Okay, the vision. Let's look at the vision. Given in the first year of Belshazzar, at the end of the new Babylonian Empire. Empire and period. So the four great beasts that came out of the great sea, the first was like a lion with eagle's wings and a man's heart. The second was like a bear, raised up on the one side, 3 ribs in its mouth. The fourth was like a leopard, 4 wings on its back, 4 heads. This is probably one of the most important aspects that you should remember, that the leopard had 4 heads. And then the fourth empire were dreadful and terrible beast, exceedingly strong, great iron teeth. It devours and breaks in pieces. It stamps the residue under its feet. Great and terrible beast. I have a friend that made this depiction of this terrible beast, just to give you some symbolic description, some way of imagining this terrible thing. Just think of this thing storming and crossing your path. Okay. So after the fourth and terrible beast, we see there are 10 horns on the head of that beast. So now we're referring to that terrible beast, D. On the head of that beast were 10 horns. Then another little horn arises between the other 10 horns. It plucks up 3 horns. It has eyes and the mouth of a man. It speaks great things, and it's stronger than the other 10. And then the Ancient of Days is seen sitting on his fiery throne. Judgment is set. The books are opened. Millions minister to him, and even more stand before him. Before the Ancient of Days. The last beast, this great and terrible beast, is slain. The lives of the other beasts are prolonged for a season and time. And then we also read that one like the Son of Man comes with the clouds of heaven. He comes to the Ancient One and receives dominion, glory, and an eternal kingdom. And all nations will serve him. This is all in Daniel 7. The exact relation between the Ancient of Days sitting on the throne, that's the time of judgment, and when the Son of Man would come on the clouds of heaven, are not clearly spelled out. We're not sure how exactly does it relate. It's not important at that stage in the prophecy. It's only important that these are mentioned as important events. You've read it, all of you. So nothing is new. Sorry. This thing is a little bit slow. Okay, let's look at the explanation given by the angel to Daniel. So now we find what we have in the first place is the vision. Then we have the explanation given by the angel. And then we have, what is on the third level? Our interpretation of that which has been said by the angel. So A to D, it's 4 different kingdoms. They are referred to as sometimes as kingdoms, sometimes just as kings. But they're clearly kingdoms. The focus in this prophecy is clearly on the 4th kingdom. But it refers to 4 kingdoms that will arise on the scene in the Middle East. And these kingdoms are depicted by the 4 beasts. The 4th kingdom shall devour the whole earth. Now, here is something quite interesting. The Roman Empire, if we would later take this as the 4th kingdom, and any of the historical kingdoms, none of them devoured the whole earth. It wasn't spread to America, it wasn't spread to China. So this is not true. This is false, isn't it? How would you answer that? Come on, Geert, give me a good answer. We should not read the ancient biblical passages from the framework of the modern scientific mind. I've told you yesterday. They didn't know science. They didn't look at it in these terms. They didn't look at these things as facts. When I refer to earth, it's the whole earth, everywhere. No. It was just the known earth. It is meant is the known world. Yes. Are you happy?
Yes, I will say anything, and what I say to you that came in my ears. It's a sentence later. You tell a question, and then comes the question in my mind, in my ears, and then you are a sentence further. So ik steek mijn vinger op.
But then I answered it.
Say that?
Okay. So a little bit of delay.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like Neil Armstrong speaking from the moon. Yeah. Okay, so he shall devour the whole earth. What is meant there is the known world. And even in that case, it wasn't really the whole world, but the known world that was sort of the civilized world. And in that sense, we should understand it. So you should read the Old Testament and the whole Bible in this perspective, always. It's an observation statement. And the prophecies are also in that sense given. It's observation statements. The Roman Empire ruled over the whole world, and one should understand it in the ancient context, not from a modern context. I just mention it because we should read the whole Old Testament, and especially the Old Testament, but the whole Bible in those terms. Okay, after the 4th kingdom came the 10 kings will arise out of the 4th kingdom. So out of the 4th kingdom comes forth 10 kings. And then another horn, different from the other 10s. So these 10 kings are presented, the 10 horns are presented as 10 kings. And then another horn, which is another king, which is different from the others, will arise. He speaks great words against the Most High God. He shall wear out, that is, prosecute the saints. So this other horn, which is at first a little horn, but then becomes more powerful than all the others, than the 10, of which he plucks out 3. He comes in their place. He's more powerful than the others. He will speak great words against the Most High God. He'll wear out, he'll prosecute the saints. He thinks to change time and laws. He shall have the saints in his hand for a time, times, and the dividing of the time, or of times. For a time, times, and the dividing of times. What does that mean? We'll come to it. We'll discuss it. So that's the period during which he will on the world see. And then judgment shall sit, and his dominion will be taken away. This little horn that has become so powerful. His dominion will be taken away. He will be destroyed unto the end. Here again has this expression, unto the end, towards the end of days. And then the kingdom of the saints of the Most High will arise. But we have seen previously, that's in the context of the Son of Man, which comes with the clouds of heaven, and his kingdom, which will be established on earth. So it's in that context that we should understand the kingdom of the saints of the Most High. So this is what the angel says to Daniel. So now we understand it. The 4 beasts represent 4 kingdoms that will come on the world scene, especially in the ancient Middle East and later Middle East, in the context of Israel, because on that, remember, Daniel is at first a prophet for Israel, but also for the nations.
Is that the 4 from gold, silver, and lead?
We'll come to it.
Okay.
Yes. So in this case, we'll only discuss the evangelical interpretation, because chapter 2 and chapter 7 are very similar, so the stuff that we've discussed earlier are just applicable again, regarding the biblical criticism view. Okay, so the obvious correspondence is with the vision of Daniel, of Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 2. The lion corresponds with the head of gold. Lion, who of you have, probably all of you have seen a lion, I assume. You've been to the zoo, you've seen lions there. South Africa, you'll see them running wild. They're roaming in the wild. Who of you have been to South Africa? Yeah, you've been. Yeah, you've seen the lion? Yes. Marvelous beast. Marvelous, beautiful. I once saw a lioness actually, and she was walking about this far from me. And my window was open, but you should never put your hand through the window. Then you break the silhouette. And then she sees you. Otherwise, she just sees the silhouette. And she was about like, not as far as your feet, even closer. And she was walking like this in the road. And I reversed slowly with her as she was walking. And you can see her eyes. She looks up like that. Looked up like that. You look into that yellow eyes. It's a frightening experience. But all the children was just so quiet. Okay, so the first is the lion. Head of gold. Gold is the king of metals. The lion is the king of the forest, of the animals. And that refers, we've already seen, the New Babylonian Empire. We've already seen where the New Babylonian Empire had been. And I would just like to give some perspective. Here's just a modern day map. And we are in Europe. And you can see over there is the area that we're talking about. Is this nicely focused? Or is the focus okay? It seems to me that the focus, maybe it's my eyes. I'm not sure. Okay, so this empire, this present day Iraq, it was mostly situated in Iraq, in the old Mesopotamia, from Mesopotamos. That's the country of the 2 rivers. The 2 rivers being? Correct. Very good. Here they are. So this was the main area of the kingdom. There is the country of modern day Iraq. So there. And here's Israel. So it's only in that area that this kingdom was situated. Then came the bear. The bear. So the bear is also a very prominent and mighty animal. Bears roam this area of the world. Do they still roam here? Somewhere in the woods? You have bears in this world? This area of the world? No. No bears? You've killed them all? That's quite bad.
Teddy bear.
It's also a powerful beast, but not as powerful as the lion. In the same way that the breasts and arms of... Sorry, where am I now? Yeah, this is wrong. That mustn't be copper, that must be silver. That's a mistake. Breasts and arms of silver. Silver is also a very important metal. It's just under the gold. Precious, but not as precious as gold. It's the Median and Persian Empire. And here is the Median and Persian Empire. We've already discussed it. Then comes the leopard. It's the belly and thighs of copper. So the leopard agrees with the belly and thighs of copper in the framework of the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream. And that refers, we've already seen when we discussed this, the belly and thighs is the Macedonian Empire of Alexander. But now we can understand the four heads of the leopard much better. In the image of Alexander, these were not accentuated. The four parts in which the kingdom of Alexander were divided were not accentuated. But now it is. We see that the leopard has four heads. And these four heads we can now clearly identify. The four kingdoms that arose from the Greek Empire were Ptolemy in Egypt, Seleucus in Babylon, and these other two in Thracia and Macedonia. And here we have the red line depicts where the empire of Alexander had been. The yellow is the original area of the Seleucid Empire, and we'll see that in time it became much smaller, but that was just after the division. Ptolemaic Empire in Egypt, and these two are the two that interest us. We'll see, especially in later lectures when we discuss Daniel 8 and Daniel 9 and 10 and 11, that they feature extremely important in Daniel's prophecy. So the leopard has four heads. So the Seleucid Empire is just one of the four heads of the leopard. That's extremely important, because previously we've seen that the biblical criticism view wants to see this belly and thighs as the Seleucid Empire, or see the iron as the Seleucid Empire. But now we can see it's not the iron, because it's part of the four heads of the leopard. It belongs to the copper. You with me? You with me? Kidu? You with me? Okay. So the land of Israel was later part of the area of the Seleucid Empire.
And Trace, which empire was
Just say again.
can you say Trace, was that in Afrikaans then?
Thrace?
Yeah?
Thracia? That's in the northern part of Greece. It's over there.
No.
Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. It was a very important country in ancient times. It's the southern part of, what is that country called? Just south of Romania. Bulgaria. Yeah. So it's in Bulgaria, southern Bulgaria. Beautiful area that. And ancient history. The Thracians were great warriors. Okay. And then that area, Sassander ruled with Macedonia. Okay. If it's ever possible for you guys, you should travel. I believe you all like to travel. And if you travel, try and go also to these areas of the world. And as far as possible, in Europe, you can travel to these areas without, you have a passport, you don't even need a visa or anything. And go and see these areas of the world and read the history and familiarize yourself with that. Because if you have a broader way of thinking about things, if you have a wider perspective on life, it's always better and enables you in discussion with people if you want to bring them the gospel. If your world is small, they'll see it immediately. And they'll think you don't know much. If your world is large, they listen to you. So broaden your horizons. Visit these countries. Okay. Okay, let's proceed. So this brings us to the fourth, the dreadful and terrible beast with iron teeth. This clearly corresponds with the legs of iron. See again, the iron is repeated. It has iron teeth, and the legs were also of iron, the legs of the image, of the statue. And we've seen that referred to the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire were divided into the Western Empire and the Byzantine Empire, and that the 2 feet of the statue, that's not presented in Daniel 7. So this division in 2 is not presented in Daniel 7. It's only presented in Daniel 2. So the one prophecy focused on certain aspect, the division in 2 of the Roman Empire, the 2 feet that came out of the 2 legs, and the toes. But in Daniel 7, that's not focused on, because it's a different image. But again, we have the 4th beast, and we have the 10 horns. So the 10 toes on the image agrees with the 10 horns of the terrible beast. And we've already discussed the Holy Roman and Byzantine empires. And just to show you with 2 maps next to each other, this is the 2 parts in which the Roman Empire, the Old Roman Empire, were divided into. Here is the Holy Roman Empire, the green, and over there is the Byzantine Empire. So this came out of the western part, that came out of the eastern part of the empire, the Old Roman Empire. So you can very nicely see the 2 empires that came out of the original 2 parts of the Old Roman Empire, existing at the same time. This brings us to the 10 horns, or 10 toes. So this has not yet been fulfilled. And then another horn, stronger than the others. This is not presented in the metal statue. So the metal statue doesn't mention this, another horn, another king that will arise in the end of days. It's only mentioned in Daniel 2. So the 2 images, the image of the statue, the metal statue in Daniel 2, and the image, the vision of the 4 beasts in Daniel 7, they're not just a repetance of each other. They're not just repeating the same stuff. They gives us a different perspective on these events. And that's why it was necessary to give 2 visions, each one focusing on a different aspect. Remember Plato's ideas about the distant or the future dictator. You remember yesterday? We related it to secular, ancient thinking about history, and Plato's ideas about the forms of government. And Plato said that the metals, the 4 metals, would, or in his view, present 4 kinds of government which degenerate through time, and the worst form of government in his thinking would be democracy, which would arrive on the scene at the latest time throughout the ages. It evolved from the monarchy through the various stages, the military government, the oligarchy, and eventually in democracy. For Plato, the worst form of government, and for him, one of the reasons why it's the worst form of government is out of the democracy would arise a dictator. Yes, very similar to what the Bible says. The little horn coming out of the 4th kingdom at the end of days, which seems to present in the evangelical view, we believe this is the Antichrist. The powerful horn, the Antichrist, is eventually conquered, is judged. The Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. Who is that referred to? Who is this that is referred to? Jesus. How do you know that?
He's coming again on the clouds.
Yeah.
The second coming.
But why would you think that this image in Daniel 7 refers to the second coming?
Because the angel said to the disciples on the Mount of Olives.
Well, what you're telling me now is that Jesus will come again. That's not my question. My question is, why would this image refer to the second coming? Because Jesus himself refers to this image, and he says that this refers to his second coming in the prophetic discourse. He says, and then will the Son of Man come with the clouds of heaven, referring to the end of times, when he will return. So Jesus says, this image refers to my second coming. Okay? In the prophetic discourse. You happy? Is that the question?
Matthew 24, right?
Yeah, Matthew 24, Luke 21. Sorry? You mean we're in scripture? You meant where in Scripture? Ah, sorry. Yeah. Matthew 24, Luke 21. Okay, and Mark also. Okay, so what is important here is this refers to Jesus' second coming. This implies that the prophecy of Daniel 7 stretches from the time of Daniel to the second coming. Amazing. So this is the most important prophecy in the Bible. Daniel 2 and Daniel 7 gives the background for all prophecies, for all important prophecies. We can fit it into this framework. But this one gives more detail. This is the most important prophecy in the Bible. It shows that Daniel's prophecy stretches from the time that he lived, from the New Babylonian Empire, until the time, not only of judgment at the end of days, but until the time when the Son of Man will appear with the clouds of heaven. And Jesus says that refers to his second coming. So this is a marvelous prophecy. It stretches throughout time, from the time of Daniel till the time of the return of Christ. And both of these are clearly showed, clearly depicted within the framework of this prophecy. The beasts include all the important empires that have and will rule over Israel till the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. All the empires until the time of Jesus Christ when he returned.
And what about the 3 horns then?
So what he says is there will be 10 horns on the head. It will come forth out of the geographical area of the old Roman Empire. And 3 of them will be plucked out by this little horn. So maybe he will consolidate his power and take the place of those 3. And then eventually he will become more important than all the others. We'll come back to it. We'll discuss it in some detail. And then you should remember that question, because we can come back and discuss that again. Okay. Any questions? Yes, Judy.
The 10 horens,
Yes.
is zijn specifiek. Moeten wij ze niet aan een koning?
Are they coming?
Ze komen nog.
We believe that will come, yeah, because we can't find them in history. There's no place in history where you can find them. We can discuss the various views. When we do the book of Revelation, we'll discuss the various views from the perspective of the book of Revelation. But none of these views can find them in history. None of them. We've discussed the biblical criticism view earlier. There's some other views also. But it's better to discuss them from the perspective of the book of Daniel. But they can't find them in history. And because the first part has been so precisely fulfilled, until the legs, the feet, we believe that the toes is just the last part. Because remember, the toes and the horns are at the time of the Antichrist. Because these 10 horns are they rule in the time of the Antichrist, because he subdues 3 of them. And then he will be judged at the second coming of Jesus Christ. So the 10 horns will arrive on the scene at the time of the second coming of Jesus. There can't be any doubt about that. That's quite clear from this prophecy. This is what makes this prophecy so marvelous. And later when we go to the book of Revelation, we'll reflect on this. The 10 horns arise in the time of the end, when Jesus will come back and return. And that's why it hasn't yet appeared on the world scene. For no other reason. And we have faith that they will appear. Why do we have faith that they will appear? Who would like to try? Why do we have faith that the 10 horns will eventually appear, the 10 kings? Why? They haven't appeared, but why do we believe that they will appear? All the other things has been precisely fulfilled, remarkably fulfilled. We could say, okay, the leopard, at the four heads of the leopard, was fulfilled in the 4 parts in which the kingdom of Alexander had been divided. Now, if we discuss this with a biblical criticism scholar, he would say, yeah, that's true. The 4 heads refer to the 4 parts of the, may refer to the 4 parts of the Macedonian Empire. But that was just history. He was just writing history. There's nothing strange about it. It's not necessarily that Daniel saw these things as happening in the future. Somebody could have written it after it happened. But when we go to the next one, that's beyond the time of after Jesus Christ. Long after it was written. There cannot be any doubt that this is prophecy. Because it's exactly been fulfilled. The Roman Empire in the first place, Jacobina have said it very nicely, it's the strongest empire of them all. There cannot be doubt about it. Never had an empire arose on the world scene as powerful as this one. Never. There were some great empires in ancient history in the Middle East. The Akkadian kings, that was a great empire. That was for all later kingdoms in the Middle East, but that's long before the period that we're discussing. That's about 2200 BC. But for all our purposes, this, and I think most scholars will agree, in the known world, rising out of ancient times, this was by far the greatest empire of them all. Yeah.
You see the Holy Roman Empire, next to that also other countries?
Yeah.
Did they belong to that empire?
No. All these countries were accepted the Catholic religion, but this was regarded as the continuation of the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire. That's why it was called the Holy Roman Empire.
So then there were more empires than only 2?
Well, this one existed for about 1,000 years, since 800 till 1800. Not continuously. There was certain times when there was no empire that was crowned by the Pope for some periods of time. At first it was in France, when Charlemagne were crowned king. And then later on it was Ottonian kings in the Germanic periods, when Germany became prominent. And later on it was in Austria, when the Habsburgs ruled over the east, especially the center of the empire were in Austria. And that came to an end in 1860. So this was a continuous empire. It moved, it became larger, smaller. This is just one shot in history that we see here. So the empire was divided in 2. That's so clear, so beautiful. The iron, strongest empire, divided in 2, exactly in the middle. The 2 legs, can't be clearer. And out of the 2 legs of iron came forth the Holy Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire.
There's one verse that took my attention again. The fourth animal, the beast, it says that he's going to make war and overcame the saints. In
Yes.
Revelation, there's a verse like that too.
Exactly.
What does that tell you?
We'll come to Revelation.
Yeah?
Then we'll discuss it. We're not going to go too fast towards that at this stage. Okay, so I think this is more or less what we wanted to talk about. I can maybe just say something that I haven't discussed in so much detail, is the iron and the clay. What does that refer to? There are various views. That's in the image of Daniel. Some say it's democracy and autocracy. But I think it may be referring to the Romans. That's the iron in continuation of the legs. And the Germanic peoples. The clay. So the Germanic peoples, the clay, and the Romans, the iron, got mixed. Why do I say this? Have a look here. Just want to show you here. This is the Roman Empire, the Romans. Now it got mixed with the Germanic peoples. So the Germanic peoples became part of the Holy Roman Empire. So the iron and the clay became intermixed in one empire. So that's why we can say that the Germans, the Germanic peoples included all the peoples, the Goths, the Franks, there were so many of these, the Vandals, all these peoples were Germanic peoples, and they settled in the framework of the Roman Empire, and out of the Roman Empire eventually came the Holy Roman Empire that included iron and clay and Germanic peoples. Okay, so let's take a break.